Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Lisa with Lisa's Faith and Budget Planning channel. I'm excited to be here today because I am doing the last chapter and the conclusion to Healthy Me, Healthy Us. It's been a great book. It's been a great ride. There's some exercises I haven't done. Still not willing to face just yet, but I do want to go back to them. But they're not something I would share because they would be too deep, too personal, and I don't want to expose other people. My whole point on the channel was just to give my thoughts on each chapter and share those thoughts with you to see if this is something you would be interested in, to looking into yourself and kind of like a self-help. It's got to do with psychology. It's got to do with taking care of yourself. And in order to have the best relationships you can have possible, you got to be healthy. And if you're not healthy, then you can't have healthy relationships. And that is the whole point of this book. So chapter 6, it's called Stepping into Another's Shoes. That's a phrase we've heard our whole lives. We're told to think of the other person, to imagine ourselves in their situation or whatever. And this addresses this in more detail and great detail. I didn't realize how much detail there would be in walking in someone else's shoes, but this really has that. So I have my notes right below. So if I keep looking down, that's what I'm looking at. Memorization is not my best forte, so I will be referring to my notes. Stepping into one's shoes is how we empathize with other people. When we can put ourselves in the difficult situation that they're in, or feel what they're feeling and what they're going through as much as possible, then we can empathize. But what I didn't realize, what commonly is thought of as empathy usually is very emotional and overwhelming, or they cry a lot, or they're so sympathetic to someone. If they ask for money, they're willing to give money, so on and so forth. So that's one of two components to empathy. And that is usually the strongest one. I think it's more female driven because we are very emotional with our care for the family, with our care for our environments, to take care of our families. I mean, we're just so family oriented as women, and we want to take care. It's in our nature. So I think we're emotionally empathize easier than most men. Now, is it true the opposite way around? It absolutely is. Men can be very emotionally empathetic. I have two sons that are very emotionally empathetic, one more than the other, and I think they take that from me. That's just something that they do, but they're also autistic. So I think that enhances that for them. I have one that is overly empathetic sometimes, so we have to really talk him through and walk through that. Let's see. The other empathy, or the other part of empathy, is the intellectual, using your head and analyzing a circumstance for empathy. That's kind of the stage I am right now. I originally, and I didn't realize this would be possible, they don't address it in the book, but I see this in myself after reading this book. When I was younger, high school, middle school, high school, college, and when I had my kids, up until I would say 5 or 6 years, maybe 10 years ago. Let's just say I'm 46 next month in October, so less than a month away. And I'd say about 10 years ago, I started to become more rigid and more cynical and more hard-hearted, I guess you could call that. And I wasn't as emotionally using my heart to sympathize with other people, which is one part of empathy. And I became more head and analyzing empathy. So those are the two different kinds. You have empathize intellectually and with your head, and you analyze the circumstance, or you empathize emotionally with your heart and you sympathize with other people easily. So those are the two components. Now, when you have both components and you can do both components together, where you can use your head and analyze and the circumstances, then use your heart and sympathy all together, then that is true empathy as it is defined. So Those are the two components, and I never really thought of it that way. Especially the head and analyzing for empathy, because I analyze everything. I like to problem solve whatever it is that's right in front of me. So if the kids have a problem, I come up with 10 different ways to work this problem. And I think it really fast, and I move really fast on it, and it annoys my family. Really, really does. So what I'm realizing is I am more willing to go the intellectual route than the emotional route. And I need to bring the emotional back in. And I need to walk in someone else's shoes again, in the empathy, where I stopped doing that because it hurt too much sometimes. And I think we'll have seasons of that. I think there will be times where empathy is very difficult because of circumstances or experiences or whatever's going on. But it's definitely something you can work on if you're not a naturally empathetic person. Knowing these facts, knowing these thoughts, and reading this book or any other book that has information on empathy would definitely hone in and help you take steps to be more empathetic and more understanding of other people. Next thing it talks about is these 4 things that happen when you do begin using the steps to empathize with others and to walk in someone else's shoes. 4 steps. The first 2 kind of go together. When you have empathy for someone else, you can curb criticism. And what they're meaning there, and what I really liked, and it's very true, is when someone's having a hard day, let's just say a friend, a spouse, someone came home and they got a speeding ticket and they're having a really bad day. Like they left their briefcase at home and had to come back, and they took off for work and they were speeding, and so they got in trouble and got a speeding ticket, and they get to work and they're late for the meeting, and then one piles after another, and then by the time they get home they're ready to blow. That is something you really need as a partner or spouse or whoever to think about. Okay, I need to empathize with this person right now because they're having a bad day, and let's see how can I help. And when you use your intellectual, your head, your analytical, seeing the problem, doing that kind of empathy, and then you bring in emotional and sympathizing empathy together, you can curb criticism that could pop up. What if you're both having a bad day? If one of you can come in and just take the moment to walk in the other person's shoes before you really start, getting an attitude or maybe even break out into a fight or something that could happen, it could definitely curb any criticism that could follow after getting together in this toxic kind of environment. I hate to use this example because it sounds horrific, but it's happened and people have talked about it. But when the one person or both are curbing criticism, empathizing with the other person's day, it shortens the conflicts. It diffuses the explosion that could happen in the conversation. And that is healthy and good. That is really good. We don't want to ignore what the problem is or the pain or anything like that, but it's good to shorten the conflict, but still allow it to be what it is. And empathizing with one another is one way to shorten that conflict and still feel satisfied that the other person understands and you got your message out and you are not alone in whatever is going on that day. The other 2 in the book, they talk about empathy is one of those things that it infuses grace in the relationship. It infuses grace. You're giving grace to the other person because they are having a bad day. And you sympathize and you empathize and your heart goes out to them. And it's important to bring grace into the relationship. And to be honest, I don't think I do it enough. I know I don't do it enough. I do not give enough grace. And I really, really should. And that's kind of what I saw in here, to infuse your relationships with more grace. That will when you take that thought and you are empathizing with someone and you see they're about to blow, and or if they're having a really hard time or whatever, just sitting there and giving them grace to go experience or get out what they're trying to express, or just giving them grace for the situation they're in. If just thinking about it feels calming, and it helps the other person to calm and helps them to kind of go, okay, I need to refocus because this is as big as I think it is, or I'm making it bigger than what it really is. And empathy is very fast acting. And I've seen this. They use an example in the book. I can't think of it, but it's like you come home and you've bought stuff at the grocery store. The cash register person was rude to you. If you actually use one. Lately, I've been scanning my own stuff and I don't, it seems very cold, but the cash register person was rude to you. Customers were like not really, I don't know, they're like in your way or something like that. And then you've got to prepare for evening dinner for friends coming over, and they didn't have everything you needed and all this stuff. And you're sitting there going, okay, now what? And your partner is like in a good mood, but they're like, hey, let's just do this instead of this dinner. And you're like, no. When your partner looks at you and gives you grace and goes, okay, what's going on and why does it have to be a no? And they empathize with you. Slowly, you're being heard, you're being confirmed, you're definitely being helped in that situation because they are listening, they're focused on you, and you are getting out what you need. And it's very fast acting to calm the situation, to bring grace into the situation, to kind of help the other person's brain to refocus that maybe it's not as bad as they thought it was, or another idea or opportunity popped up in their mind because they relaxed a little bit and because somebody empathized with them. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought, wow, how much amazing life would be if more people empathize with one another. I just thought this is crazy and awesome. So yeah, I just don't understand why we don't empathize more. But at the same time, I understand why it's hard to empathize, because the world is cruel. We're living in a fallen and broken world. And when it's cruel, we want justice. And sometimes it's not us that's supposed to give the justice. We're supposed to leave it up to God. And that is hard because we want to do the justice ourselves. So anyway, moving on. The next part was called Priming the Pump for Empathy. That was an odd title. I kind of know what it means, but anyways, basically it is to condition yourself and your mind to remember to be empathetic when situations come up, whether it's a coworker, a family member, a friend, something at church, anything that's going on. Day to day, we have our agendas, whether we know what they are or whether we don't know what they are and they just kind of play it by ear and whatever happens, happens. Which is what most of my days are like. But when you because we are an agenda-focused people group, I guess, humans are very agenda-focused because they have things they have to get done. Like I had to go pick up medication. I had to go to the grocery store. This is my real day today. Make sure my son's getting logged into his school and things like that. Speaking of checking the time. So these things are important. But when somebody comes in and interrupts that agenda, it's very hard to empathize. Because we're like, we got to get stuff done. We got to check this off the list. We got to move on to the next thing. We got this. And what God may be saying, I think, is sometimes you're going to have this interruption. And I need you to empathize with this person. And I want you to empathize with them because this is what's going to help them. And I know this is what you can do. This is how you can serve. This is how you can help. And so being prime and ready to empathize when the time calls for it, when God is saying, hey, let's do this. I've got a child over here that's not child, but a child of God, a person of God. They can be 80 years old, you don't know, that needs this empathy. And I want you to do this with them. They're going to interrupt your day. It's going to be okay. When you are allowing your mind to see things and hear things and open up for empathy when it's time. Wow, could you imagine? Instead of being peeved because your day got interrupted or being mad or angry, you took a moment and walked with God for 5 minutes and helped someone. Oh man, how beautiful is that? I mean, that's beautiful. I love that. So anyways, that's preparing yourself or priming the pump for empathy. The art of empathy is literally walking in someone else's shoes. So there may be exercises or things that you can do. And the example in the book was, it was about for nurses and doctors to empathize with obese people. And what they would do is if the person is someone who's like 110 pounds, they put a bodysuit on them that had 30 pounds of extra weight, which for a 110 pound person, that's a lot of weight. Their joints are not used to that. So the description was, how do they sit in a chair easily? In fact, they had to move to a different chair that was meant for an obese person. They had to change the seat on a bicycle so they can sit on the bicycle because the other seats were too small, and how their legs rubbed when they were trying to ride the bicycles, the physical challenges, and then what emotions that are coming up while they're wearing this bodysuit that could help them actually physically empathize with someone who is obese, and then help treat them. Because when we have doctors and nurses that are empathetic to situations and people and what's going on, and not just taking the 15 minutes and run to quickly diagnose and move on, which drives me bananas, but it is what it is. We're able to physically see, physically hear, physically touch, and feel others' struggles when we do an exercise like that. So that is the art of empathy. That's in that section. It is important to really put yourself and really walk in their shoes in order to understand and put yourself in that situation. Not all things will you be able to do like that, but really try to empathize in that way. So in the conclusion part, so much about this book. In the conclusion, they're talking about the different chapters. So the first 2 chapters were on profound significance. So we had turning into your self-talk, and just paying attention to it. What are you saying to yourself? Are you sabotaging yourself? Are you pushing to harm? Are these things you would say to your best friend or a loved one? Those kind of things. The second one was moving past your past. So these are the profound significant sections. And in conclusion, they were talking about for profound significance, all of that, moving past your past and hearing your self-talk, was to redirect and think and find out how all that relates to God. Because this is a faith-based book. And so all profound significance relates back to God. God, our creator. He didn't create us on a whim. He didn't create us, oh, they'll be okay. He had purpose. We're part of a bigger plan that we can't imagine. We have a plan that's set in motion in order to affect other people and their plans for the greater good. I mean, the spider web of just creating one human and how they are to touch so many lives is astronomical. And if you really sat down and thought about why God created you, the fact that God created you, and how significant you are to Him, I almost can't even go there. it's almost like selfish to go there. God created me for a plan, for a purpose that affects other people's lives and the lives around me. And that's going to spiderweb out in so many directions. And I just cannot imagine it. So, if you want profound significance in your life, if you need profound significance in your life, the only way really to find it is only found in an experience with God. You can only experience it with God and having a relationship with God. That is the only way I know I have found profound significance, because everything else I tried, going to college, getting married, having children, graduating high school, I know these are out of order, but getting jobs when I was younger, things like that, they gave me profound significance for a short period of time. Nothing's ever lasted. They are fleeting. Any achievements, any accolades, anything like that, they only last for a short period of time. But what I have discovered, and what this reaffirmed for me, was I have profound significance because I am a child of God. I have a relationship with God, and He is the profound significance in my life. Because when my life's over, I'm with Him. There is no end to that. And that what gets me through every single day. I do what He asked me to do here, and I want to do what He asked me to because it's that good. I cannot think of these things on my own. I cannot come up with profound things as He does, plans that are zigzagged and backwards and forwards sometimes. But He, having Him lead my life, be the Lord over my life, and guide my life, is profound. And it's a profound experience that sustains and lasts. So if you're looking for something like that, God's the way to go. I'm going to change the page here, my notes. Let's see, what else have I got to say here? Oh, the next section was unswerving authenticity. And that had to do with chapter 3 and chapter 4, uncovering your blind spots and facing your fears with honesty. And being authentic, I think truly I became really authentic when I was willing to lean more into God than I had at any other point in my life. I wasn't going to be afraid if He called me to do something big. What I didn't realize is He had already called me to do something big. I already had my 2 children, and I was already doing God's calling. I mean, autism is no joke, and it's not easy. So I just hadn't thought of it in that kind of way. So uncovering my blind spots, what's right in front of my face that no, everybody else can see, but I can't. Learning what that is, and then facing my fears with honesty on whatever's going on with my life. A healthy person knows their purpose on what God calls them to. And each time He calls you for a season. I don't think there is one person that's being called and it's this overarching, okay, I want you to be a missionary for the rest of your life, or I want you to be a pastor for the rest of your life. Those are long-term things that usually, yes, He does call a lot of people to, but for the everyday, non-missionary, non-pastoral, spending the rest of your life doing, He has seasons for us on what He's calling us to do. Whether it's being a mother, whether it's raising children, whether they leave the nest in the next season, He's calling you to mentor and take care of other young women and advise them as they go through their experiences. I would talk about the men's side, but I'm not a man, so I don't know what that would be. But I would imagine father mentorship, just day-to-day life mentorship. I've seen a lot of that in the men's groups and stuff. But knowing what God called you to be or do is part of being part of the profound significance and unswerving authenticity and how it relates to yourself. When you bring God in and you work together and you say, God, what in this season of my life or long-term season of my life am I to do that you've called me to do? And then walk that out with him. The last thing I want to talk about is self-giving love as it relates to others. And that was the last 2 chapters we just did. And I forgot the titles already. So self-giving love relates to as it relates to others. So I was talking about chapter 5 and chapter 6 in this kind of section. And chapter 5 was reading your social barometer. And then chapter 6 is stepping into another's shoes. So if you know yourself well enough, how you are socially, are you in someone's face? Are you too shy and far back? Are you somewhere in the middle, pretty good socially? Reading those social barometers will help you enhance your empathy with others and how to approach others, which is really important. And cope and deal with situations. So I'm going to put my book back up here. And as you work on your empathy, it will be easier to cope with disappointments, conflicts. I'm kind of reading my notes while I talk about this, and confusion that cause problems in relationships. I love how having the filter of empathy in my mind and my eyes and thinking things through really can help with situations that are disappointing. I know I had a disappointment recently and felt disappointed, even though it was just a casual comment from someone. I really felt down and disappointed about it, but it didn't last as long. It didn't bug me for as long as it normally would. And I didn't hold on and linger to it, which I thought was a really good sign that this book is really working, even if I didn't do the exercises yet. I am still planning to do that. My husband and I have talked about it. We've got a plan. We just need time. And that's the issue right now. The cool thing about empathy is in self-giving love as it relates to others is you pour out yourself into someone else. And really, you can't pour out into someone else unless God has refilled you or filled you up so much it overflows out of you to fill into someone else. And that is an amazing thing God does. When you empathize with others and you are in that moment empathizing with them, you're pouring into that person's needs for that moment of time just to get through the day, just to get through the situation that they're in day to day, and it helps lead them further into taking care of themselves, which is very important. So I love that our Creator, our God, has decided we are so important that He gives us grace, and that grace is sufficient and overflows, so we can give others grace so that they can feel sufficient, and it can overflow in them, which affects somebody else. And it's just this amazing, beautiful chain reaction in our relationships that take care of one another. And it all starts with God. All of it starts with God. And that is just so beautiful. I absolutely love that. So that is the conclusion to my Healthy Me, Healthy Us, what they talked about in the chapters. I think it's a really good book. I definitely recommend it. Don't just take my videos for what is in the book. There's so much more that you can get out of it once you read it for yourself. You do your own challenges. I've done some of the challenges. There's really one challenge I haven't done, and that was writing out the hardest parts. The rest of them I pretty much did. So I think it was chapter 2. I'm not ready to go there and pull up the darkest parts of my life and really forgive and move forward from those. There's certain areas I'm just still struggling with pain and disappointment and anger, and God's shifting me and molding me and pushing me forward. So I pray that happens to you. I pray you get a lot of value in this and that you refer back to this as often as possible when you feel that you don't have profound significance anymore, and that you feel like you cannot empathize with someone else because maybe you've become more cynical or whatever. You feel these things and you need a little tune-up. come back to this book. Look at this book again. Read through what the chapters are. Redo the exercises again so that you can still stay in contact with who you want to be with God. And like I said, none of this would happen without him. And I thank him for it. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of my videos, please subscribe to my channel. And I will see you guys in the next book. I think what I'm going to do is talk about Jen Wilkins' Bible study on 1 Peter. Our church is doing it. We're having Zoom classes or whatever virtually and meeting in small groups, and we're going to talk, and I'm just going to come back and give my thoughts on each section of 1 Peter that we go through and what impacted me the most. So if you like that kind of content, subscribe to my channel and check out those videos. We'll start probably the last week of September. So have a blessed and amazing day, and I will see you next time. Bye.